topic that I'm going to be talking about today. And before I dive in, I just want to make a little plug. I'm a co-founder of a tech company. I have two great co-founders, and what we do is we help companies move from the idea and concept to designing and building a mobile prototype and releasing it on the App Store in a very time and cost-effective manner. So there you go. Most of my work is with people these days, and I'm very fascinated. I'm fascinated by people, and that's what brought us here today. All right, so what we are going to talk about today, and if any one of you has a question in the middle, feel free to jump in. I want this to be more of a discussion and less a monologue, so feel free. We'll talk about the way we make decisions and how that relates to tech, how our day-to-day decision-making influences long-term planning and strategy and projects and things of that nature. We will explore the topic of cognitive biases and see how they affect us in tech. What I really want everybody to do right now is pay attention to the next video for about 55 seconds. If I only can get it play. Alright. I hope you can all see it.
How many passes does the team in white make? The answer is 13. But did you see the moonwalking bear?
How about that? Anybody got the number of passes right? Good for you. Well, this goes to show that the way our memory and our attention works is not that straightforward. Sometimes we pay more attention to things that are not as apparent and not as obvious, and sometimes we go a little deeper in analyzing these situations. So, apologies. Sean actually said never apologize, so I take it back. Definition time, right? You can all read through this, I believe. A cognitive bias, simply put, is a systematic mistake in reasoning contrary to, regardless of contrary information. A systematic mistake in reasoning contrary, regardless of contrary information. And what we need to remember is that we are a product of evolution. Our species are about 250,000 years old, and we share a common ancestor with chimps about 9 million years ago. We share a common ancestor with pigs about 90 million years ago, and some of the parts of our system and our brains are very similar to those of lower-ranked, quite primitive animals. And in the field of behavioral psychology, this is the field that I became interested in about 2 years ago, people distinguish two modes of thinking. All right? System one is slow, is rather fast and intuitive, and system two is slow and reasonable and logical. And as humans, we tend to think that we're infallible, we do not make mistakes, but we all do. We just do. Lizard brain, right? What is it? That's basically that's our system one. It's responsible for the fight or flight instinct. It's responsible for feeding and a lot of different automatic things that we do on a day-to-day basis without even noticing. When we walk with our phone in the street, when we try to commute somewhere downtown, that's what happens. Our system takes us there. When we, I don't know, man, come up with examples. You all know what I'm talking about, I think. The limbic cortex and amygdala in particular are the parts of our brain that are responsible for that. We make, that's basically that's the system that's responsible for snap judgments, snap decisions, really quick, without thinking too much. Why should anybody care, right? Well, it's kind of important because in tech, we are all kind of in tech, I believe. In tech, we make a lot of decisions. We make a decision on which project to go with, which technology to choose. We estimate how long a certain project is going to take. We budget things, and if we approach those things from with systematic errors, it's kind of not a surprise that 90% of software projects fail to meet deadlines and go over budget. Think about that, 90%, that's, wow. Irrational thinking in tech is very prevalent still. It doesn't really matter like how bad we want it to be otherwise, and I feel like we need to address it. A lot of what I'm going to be talking about today is based in my personal experience, and I'll share a couple of stories with you. The irrational thinking that we apply has a lot of implications based depending on what position the people that make those decisions are in, and it really matters. Story time. I worked in Germany, and in 2015 I worked for Teradata in Munich. And I was a part of a 15-person team that was working on a project that lasted about 2 years. It never had a go-live date. It never went live. The budget was more than 2 million euros, and it was such a disaster. I spent 6 months of my time doing that, and it was horrible. Because everybody, like, as a software engineer, the thing that you want is send somebody a link and like, dude, go check out this app, or like check out that website that I designed or built, right? Nah, not in that case. I still have nothing to show for that. We chose, in my opinion, we chose a very complex solution, complex technology. We went with HBase and Hadoop and Scala, and for the people that know about those things, I'm pretty sure that you can imagine how excited the engineers were to learn those things and to get some hands-on experience. We wrote a lot of code, we spent a lot of time, and produced nothing. I mean, it is what it is, right? It's important to point out that an alternative choice, an alternative solution, was never brought up by anybody on the team, and that was a big part of why I left. The division was sold off to yet another buyer. So Teradata bought the division back in 2012 and sold it off in 2016 or 17, about 8 months after I left. Sad story. We've already invested so much time, man. We just need to get it over the top, over the hill. It's gonna be all right. We just need a little bit. Anybody plays poker? You know what pot committed is?
Yeah.
Right? You bet and you bet and you bet, and all of a sudden no money. It is what it is, right? Sunk cost fallacy. That's the first one that I'm leading with, and it can be costly. There are some ways to combat the sunk cost fallacy. Most importantly, see if the decisions that were made are proving to be right or wrong early on. Because a lot of the indicators will be there. You will miss deadlines, you will rewrite things when we're talking about tech, and the signs will be there. It's important to pay attention. I really like this quote. The only thing that's constant is change. It's really important. You need to adapt. Everybody needs to. I need to as well. I can tell you another story from my professional experience. About a year ago, a bit more than a year ago, the team that's now in Saiti, the team that I work with, was called something else and worked on a product. We were building it for about 4 months. We pivoted about halfway through, and at some point it became apparent that the market that we're trying to address is a bit scamish. It was in the gambling industry, and people that we had to deal with were either monopolists or just give me your money types. So we decided to do something else and never look back. So be on the lookout. All right, this is Amsterdam. I love it. It's one of my favorite cities in the world. Who has been in Amsterdam? I've got a question for you, all right? Nobody looks it up on Google. And if you do, please don't ruin the experience for everybody else. So, the Netherlands, it's a European country. Question: is the population of Netherlands greater or smaller than 500,000 people? Greater. The consensus is greater. It is greater. Anybody got a number? What is the population of Netherlands? 3 million we got? 1 million? Anybody? All right, that's cool. 1 million and 3 million. It's actually 17,084,459. How about that? And the effect that we see here is called the anchoring effect. We tend to value the very first piece of information that we're given a lot, and sometimes it's not really based in facts. Imagine if we negotiated salary.
Yeah, exactly. True.
Right? You come in to your manager and go like, "Hey, Mr. Manager, I have and you have a figure in mind. You're like, I want to raise $10,000. And you go in and you say, I want a raise, and they go like $1,000. What's your answer? Like, okay. Or like 4, maybe, please? I mean, it's important, right? And you can all imagine how this relates to your work and what you do. There are a couple of ways. So yes, it affects budgeting, negotiations, feature estimations, and a lot of different things. There are a couple of ways to battle the anchoring effect, and the first obvious way is to throw out an anchor yourself. So if your Mr. Manager goes like 1,000, go like 20,000. There's a chance of you being fired. That happened to my friend, actually. Be the judge. You can make a joke out of it and be like, well, I mean, when I came in, I had a number in mind, and it was 10,000. It's important when you notice an anchor. It's important to slow down the negotiations or whatever is in question and kind of sit back and think whether that anchor is based in facts. So with salary, you can do your own research, go to Glassdoor and figure out what the market pays, and then go back and say, listen, I made my own research, I really appreciate the offer, and it seems like people are getting paid a little better. So what are we going to do about it? A little example of how we applied, how we address the anchoring effect in our company. If anybody is familiar, I'm not sure if you can see the numbers, but it goes like 13, 8, 20, nothing, 40, 13. This is people trying to figure out how long a piece of functionality is going to take. So what we noticed was that a lot of the time, see the 40 figure, a lot of the time the people that go lower will gang up on whoever's thrown out the biggest number, thus causing them to retract a little bit. And it's a big issue because I would personally like to know exactly how long things are going to take. I would rather prefer that. This causes a lot of underestimation. It's not a big problem if you mistake 3 hours of work for 1 hour of work, but if we're talking like 40 hours, man, that's a week, right? Yeah. If the company that you're working for thinks in weeks, you might mistake something that takes 3 weeks for maybe half a week. And I've been there more than once. So what we did was reverse the rules. We noticed the pattern and we reversed the rules. So we went like, whoever got the smallest number goes first. And a lot of the time what happens is they're like, oh, there's an easy solution. There is something that you guys haven't probably thought about, but it can be done really easily. And that helps because we kind of cut corners and deliver faster. So the person that gives the smallest estimates goes first. That was the rule. Confirmation bias, right? Another story. So my first company in Canada, it was a startup that was addressing a very specific problem a very real problem in the digital marketing space with a very rigid solution. The solution wasn't really tailored to the big market. It wasn't really addressing a lot of the needs that we saw, and we invested a lot of time in it. Kind of goes back to the sunk cost fallacy a little bit. We spent a lot of time perfecting the technology, and at some point we just realized that nobody really cares about it that much. We went with another product, and nobody really felt sorry about that. Confirmation bias is when we pay a little less attention to the information that contradicts our pre-existing beliefs. Whether you're right-leaning or left-leaning, you watch NBC or Fox News or whatever people watch, specific YouTube channels and whatnot. It's really easy to create an echo chamber when people just repeat whatever been said before. It's not really productive, it's not really effective, and it's not really getting anybody anywhere. It leads to overconfident investments, and who wants that? Nobody. So a couple of ways to address that. It's really important to work with people outside of your immediate working group. It's really important to, whether you would like to call them consultants or whatever, it's not really that important. Just invite people. If you're in a co-working space, come say hi to someone and work through the problem with them. Pay attention to the solutions that are not that obvious, that haven't been proposed before. We talk about diversity a lot, and it's very important. I believe that one of the most important types of diversity is the diversity of ideas. It's a good way to arrive at the most efficient solution. Be open to people that think differently. Well, the good news is that not all of our biases are bad. People can trick themselves to perform better. You can do that. You can do that. You can do that. I'm doing that right now, actually. Galatea effect. What I'm saying to myself is, I can do this talk, I will not screw it up because I know I can. Another variation of that is the Pygmalion effect. I will do it because somebody in the position of power trusts, believes that I can do it. And to the managers out there, give your employees a pat on the back. It won't hurt. To everybody, believe in yourself. It's a thing and it really helps. There's a little stat for you. If you're among the most optimistic people, you're that less likely to die of stroke, apparently. So, change the attitude. Right. So, to kind of finish this off, what started me on this journey was this specific book. This guy, Daniel Kahneman, got a Nobel Prize. He was, with his colleagues, he was one of the founders of the behavioral psychology field, and it's a really nice read. I really, really, really recommend it. The slides are there's going to be a link to the slides, by the way, so you don't have to take pictures or anything that you want to do. You'll get a chance to download them if you want. There's an ever-growing list. There is a Wikipedia page with an ever-growing list of known cognitive biases. You might want to bookmark that as well, just to be aware. And that's pretty much it. Thank you all for your attention. And before I open up to questions, I just want to plug my company once again and say that if you or your company can benefit from a software build with a quick turnaround, particularly with mobile apps, come talk to me. I'm very interested. And we actually hit deadlines and make a point of that. And with that, I open up to questions.
I was just wondering about the planning broker and how that would compare with the anchoring that you were talking about. You said that in a planning broker, the person, the lowest number goes first. Doesn't that then anchor the planning broker to a number that, because you one of your examples, you said that the person with the higher number gets bumped out a little bit. So how do the two competing ideas fit together?
Right. Well, that's a good question. So the question is, how do I reconcile that one anchoring is good and the other anchoring is bad? That's basically what happens there. And the way I do is by just seeing the stats. Like we underestimated things very badly in the past, and things have gotten better with that rule, and I just think that there is a tendency in general to underestimate things, underestimate the workload. What do you think about that?
Well, absolutely, things get underestimated. You started off by saying that 90% of your projects, not your projects, 90% of projects are they miss their deadlines or they miss their budgets or whatever. But I'm still confused why the person with the lowest number would go first. If the problem is underestimating already.
Right.
And it gets anchored to that low number.
Right.
Because that's the number that got said first.
Yeah. So the question is why would it work? So imagine this: we're estimating how long making the next Uber takes, right? Let's just say or estimate a feature, and you go like 5 hours, and I go 13. And if I am defending my estimate first, I am enticed to lower my number simply because I'm in the defensive position. So a couple of ways to approach that, right? 5 and 13, we might just kind of do the arithmetic there and go with the average, or somebody could explain. So if I'm explaining, I am trying to convince everybody, and let's just make the situation a little realer. There are like 3 other people in the planning session also, and all of a sudden I need to convince you and them of my number. The reality is that you don't. Like nobody can justify why things will take a lot of time, because what we're dealing with in the industry is a lot of unknowns, right? And some of them are known unknowns, and some of them are unknown unknowns. So, does that answer your question?
I agree with you, and I think another explanation of that can be, most of the time when people just defend an idea, it becomes personal. And I think when you bring a rule like that, we will start with the smallest one, and there will be a logical explanation of that, and we will continue. So it will be less, a personal subject, and I think, it's just a way to bring some logic to the discussion. So I agree,
Also, really important, people that go low sometimes bring up different solutions. So I might think of something else when I'm estimating the feature, and and you might think of an easier solution that I just didn't happen to think of. If we lead the conversation with the smallest number, we're giving ourselves an opportunity to discover that quicker.
Yeah, one thing just to add to that is, in my experience in software, working with some people where they don't want to actually build a feature, and then they'll just put like a ridiculous estimate out there, so it like deters everyone from building it, and like that's not a good dynamic, but like I feel it happens.
It does. It really does.
Yeah.
I mean, it's terrible. I mean, we had a project about 6 months ago that we estimated in 3 weeks, and it dragged on for 3 months. I mean, we didn't make any money on it. Whoops.
But yeah, just to further his point, I mean that bias changes, right? The more knowledge you gain, that bias changes, and then maybe you can arrive at if not to put it negatively, but if a complete management person is laying down the rules for it, laying down the numbers for it, he might not actually implement it, like as you said, and he might put a very vague number on it. But and I think you also mentioned about if you're working in a co-working place, then you approach somebody else. That person is coming with his own bias. Talking about you talk about Hadoop, say talk about Spark, let's say. So just taking an example here. So he is that person is very well versed in Spark. Your team is not that well versed in Spark. So he might say this will be done in 10 hours. You don't know how to do it in 10 hours.
It's gonna be a shit show.
Yeah. So
There's no wins.
again, yeah.
It's just an ugly clash of biases,
Yeah.
and you just hope you.
Yeah. So yeah, that's.